Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack. Welcome back to Right Pack Radio. This is your host, David Allen Lucas, author of crazy, insane stuff, now working on a new sci-fi military... wow, I just screwed that up. Military sci-fi.
Military divorce.
Yeah. Oh God, no, not working on that. Military sci-fi. That's different than a lot. I know a lot of others always say that, but you'll find out why at some point in time, I hope. Anyway, and with that, I'm also president of St. Louis Writers Guild. With me today is
co-host Kathleen Kayembe, writer of paranormal romance under the pen name Kaseka and Vita. Love and Wrath has been out since 2012, and I guess this topic's really relevant to me.
Okay.
Fedora Amos. I'm president of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime. I write historical fiction, Victorian whodunit, like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis, and soon to come out from 5 Star, even if I don't like the cover, is...
Which hasn't been finalized yet, so she
I
might...
hope it comes out better than that. Is Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. You see what that's done to me? This cover is driving me crazy.
So I thought maybe my misspeak earlier caused your misspeak. Go ahead.
Okay, well, we're just passing around the misspeaking bug around the table. See, it's contagious. I'm Melanie Kulaney. I'm writer of sci-fi, fantasy, and nonfiction.
Hi, I'm Peter Green, author of Ben's War with the U.S. Marines, a World War II biographical memoir, and Fatal Designs and Crimes of Design to Patrick McKenna Mysteries.
Excellent. And today, and what's hilarious is we have two authors with us who write underneath pen names. Today we're going to do to non-de plume or to non-de plume, or better yet, to have a pen name or not to have a pen name.
What's in a pen name?
And what's in a pen name. So, what caused the thought on this process was yours truly gets to hear every single one of these episodes at least twice, if not more than twice, because I'm the one who produces and edits them. And I get up there on Blog Talk Radio, which we love, thank you. And I was listening to one which I could not attend, and that was the one about Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Goodreads, which I was glad I was not here for. But raised the question, as Amazon was going through, as this group was talking about Amazon, whether or not you should go by a pen name, because what's happening is Amazon was going out, and it is going out, as far as I know it's still happening, going out looking at people's social media, don't know if it's Facebook or what, and going, oh, Kathleen, you just reviewed David's book, and you're listed as a friend of his. Let's demote or erase your surely subjective review off of my book. Now, I'm being very sarcastic. So that, while I'm listening to this recording, it made me wonder about pen names. There's lots of reasons to have them. There's lots of reasons not to have them. And I will tell you, we'll talk about, is it an advantage of Amazon or not? The answer is no. Because we Googled that before we got started.
And we discovered that if you want to claim a book under a nom de plume, you have to identify your real name, and then you can claim up to 3 pen names as your own books, but they will find you one way or the other.
Yes. So, pen names. Ladies, you two have them, Fedora and Kathleen. Why do you guys go with pen names?
Yeah, you want to go first?
Sure. I think one of the most basic reasons is that writers write more than one kind of thing. In my own personal case, for example, I am published in nonfiction, and that is under my real name. Now, don't mistake me. my nonfiction is all educational materials, and nobody's going to mistake it for a Victorian who done it. So, truthfully, I just wanted a pseudonym, but I think that is a very valid reason. I know a romance writer who writes more than one kind of romance, and they are very different, believe me. She writes sweet inspiration romances about the Amish, and she also writes down and dirty erotica.
Yes. Well, the advantage of you're doing it after being well known for writing educational materials is you wouldn't want people to prejudge you as saying, "Oh, she writes this dry stuff. I wouldn't want to read her fiction."
Excuse me, Peter.
Well,
my
just
nonfiction was
saying.
not dry.
Well, good. More power to you. Maybe you shouldn't have a nom de plume.
No,
then.
but it's an issue of branding. Is
Yeah.
what you're saying. It's so people can, if people buy under pen name A, they'll know they're getting a sweet Amish romance, and a pen name B, they know they're getting erotica, and they're not surprised.
Yes.
Well, and there's an author, I'm going to turn over to Kathleen, but there's an author which some of us know in this room. She's local St. Louis. She's a member. No, I'm not going. I'm going. I'm not going to destroy her pen name. So I'm going to back off. I'm not going to identify her, even if destroyed by accident. She writes children's books for the most part underneath her own name, but she writes erotica underneath a nom de plume for obviously clear reasons.
Yes.
Between the two.
You'd like to hide it from Mom, I bet.
Well, and
I know I would from my mom if
just
I
so you
wrote
know,
erotica.
it's not a super secret because she signs both books at the same event, being very clear
But
which is
still.
which. But yes.
Oh.
So,
Well, that was a
Kathleen.
good segue to why I have a pen name. I do include erotic scenes sometimes in my paranormal romance. And moreover, I write gay and lesbian paranormal romance. So those are the things I've been published for, gay paranormal romance. And my parents, I love them and they love me and they know exactly what I write. But I don't want it to reflect poorly on them because of their specific jobs. I do not want my name getting crossed with theirs and then having that undermine their own authority in their work. Sure. Because, especially in one case, it would do that. So I don't want that getting mixed up with them. I'm weird about my own name going on things. I guess I've been part of the internet world for such a long time that my name is not what goes on what I write anymore. So there's that too. But yeah, I like the idea of having my own name still be mine. Like, it's an open pen name. I acknowledge that it's mine, and I'll tell you, But it does give me some semblance of privacy, however, little that is, I feel. I did have an experience. I wanted to volunteer, like, just, reading books with kids and stuff. And they were really excited to have me there because I was an author. But I was not given a call back because I was an author of paranormal erotic romance, paranormal gay erotic romance, and it was, shall we say, a religious school. So that also, I also need that separation to be able to do some of the things that I like. As you said, David, about the woman who writes children's books and erotic romance, like, you need that line. And
You want your Google searches to come up appropriately.
Well, it doesn't take much digging to find the truth, but most
Yeah.
people aren't going to do that much digging. And if they have to do that much digging, then probably not other people. No one else is.
tying into that, I'm actually going to read here in just a moment from a website which talks about why to have and why not to have.
What's the website?
Well, I'm going to talk about
Oh.
that in a second. Another fact of writing is most writers, like 90%, that's throwing a dart at a dartboard, actually don't live on their writing. We're not that well published. We don't have that big a fan base. We're not James Patterson, Stephen King,
Neil Gaiman.
Charlene Harris, Linda K. Hamilton, etc. We're more middle shelf or low shelf, as they call it in the community. And the fact is what you are writing. If you have a full-time job, your employer may not want to be associated with you and have you as an agent of their company. Now I put that in quotes.
Just as a sidelight to that, I think that is true of the vast majority of people who work in the arts, whether they are in graphic arts, whether they are musicians. It's a hard row to hoe, and I just discovered that being a private investigator also is too. Not that that's an art necessarily, but there are a lot of people out there who freelance and have this as a second job or a third job, and certainly you have to separate it from everything else that you do. And you have to understand that there are careers that just aren't going to really support you.
Well, the only thing that I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say on that note, I know some of the writers at LT3, Less Than 3 Press, that's my publisher, who's amazing. They were not out to their workplaces that they wrote, gay and lesbian romance. I think now it's a little safer to say stuff like that, but still, office culture that I've been in, it's not really okay to admit something like that.
Right.
A conversation about women, with a group of women tittering over how, risque 50 Shades of Grey is not a safe place for you to say, I write sex scenes and get paid for it. It's not okay. You might get fired, and at the very least, you would not be part of conversations anymore.
And you get snickered at.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, as a school teacher, was in the history department, but she wrote romance under the table. But she wouldn't want anybody just in general to know that because they would snicker at her and laugh at her.
Yeah, people are judgy people.
That's
kind of
right.
what we do. We classify things.
Right.
And,
We do.
And some of our genres are not
And
friendly.
even less controversial. Now you hit one that's less controversial. You got a teacher writing romance. Controversy-wise, that's not controversial. But yet, community-wise,
Or just a
Yeah.
plain old history teacher writing fiction.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
just keeping yourself together properly and having the right degree of decorum and gravitas in the classroom.
Right.
That's what she wanted.
And yet I get confused when somebody like Nora Roberts prints in big letters on the cover of the book, Nora Roberts writing as, and then she,
That's an issue of branding.
yeah.
Because a Nora Roberts book is one thing, a J.D. Robb book is something else, one of her other books is a third thing. It's because you want to be able, the reader wants to be able to pick out the book and know what they're getting.
Yeah.
It's similar to what Fedora was saying about the Amish romance versus erotic romance. Charles DeLint does the same thing. His Samuel M. Key books have his name, Charles DeLint, as well as Samuel M. Key on the cover. But you know if you're picking up a Samuel M. Key book because it will tell you that it's going to be more graphic and dark and violent than a Charles DeLint book, which is more whimsical. So that's something, it's branding, and it's also to help people know what they're getting.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go down a little bit of subject. I said I was going to read something here from a website, which actually is writingworld.com, and it's a dash between writing and world. This was a article or a blog they posted called "Should You Use a Pseudonym?" Now, I might be putting words in Fedora's mouth, but I seriously doubt it. In my role, in various roles as part of St. Louis Writers Guild, and I'm assuming also as president of Sisters in Crime, you get approached frequently by newer authors. Or like, should I do a pen name, or should I write underneath my name? Should I do this? Should I do that? Am I right?
Yes.
So this article starts off with, it talks about there's lots of reasons to do a pen name. Let's talk about the bad reasons first. Why should you not do a pen name?
Well, I think Melanie had a really good one
Branding. Yes.
that you were talking about, trying to slip in on somebody else's good name.
Oh,
Tell us what you said about that.
Oh, okay. There are books other than bestsellers with special shelves. Books are labeled in bookstores. This is getting to be less of an issue by alphabetical order. So if your name just happens to be very close to the name of a very well-known author, people in the bookstore are very likely to pick up your book, or at least see your book, when they're going for that author. And I was thinking search terms. So, for instance, if someone misspells an author's name into your name, you know, if they were going for J.D. Patterson, but they spelled it the wrong way and hit your book,
Plenty in it. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
you know?
And that's a cheap cheap trick, shall we say. A cheap
Another
trick.
one that she mentioned off mic is if your name is at the end of the alphabet, you may not be getting that many book sales because somebody's been browsing and has already gone through the age through pick a letter.
No, wait a minute. I'm not sure that's a bad reason because you're not really you're
You're
exploiting
talking about me for one thing.
Yeah.
you're not exploiting a single person there. You're just exploiting the alphabet there.
You're explaining the alphabet, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
as you had brought up off mic, you're less likely, it's possible you're less likely to get picked up underneath your Z name because that's at the end of the alphabet, and
Or
depending
get
on...
buried in the middle of the alphabet somewhere.
Right, or get buried in the middle of the alphabet underneath the S's. Oh my God, how many S's or M's are there? And L's.
You chose S and M as your
I
letters.
didn't. I did that completely subconsciously. No, yeah, no, not my, not no.
No, he just does indexing of names all the time.
Yes. Actually, I used to work in a library. So anyway, here are some of the reasons. Here are some of the bad reasons, and there are a total of 5. And I'm just going to list here that is on this blog I mentioned a moment ago. Number 1, I like to have something more exotic. This often involves the assumption that editors or readers will be more impressed by a more interesting name. They won't. I'm going to skip on. Number 2.
I'm not so sure about that. I don't know
Go for
about
it.
about editors and agents and the like, but I think that interesting names or far-fetched names or odd names,
Like Lemony
Snicket, exactly, they capture people's attention and are memorable. So I'm not sure that's such a bad reason.
The other aspect, though, I'm going to fight on the other side. Believe it or not, I actually agree with everything you just said. But I'm going to fight back by saying, what about names you cannot pronounce? So by
Like mine.
yeah, no offense.
No, it's African.
I mean,
get it.
every time I look at your pen name, every confession of the editor of this show. Every time I list our tag on Blog Talk Radio, who's all on the show, and actually I've gotten to the point of just tag everybody and be done with it. But when I do that, I have got to look at last week's tags to figure out how the heck to spell your pen name. One of these days I'll have it down. I finally have Fedora's down. Yay! So yours is next, but exactly.
No, I get it. It's not an American name in either case. It's not an American spelling in either case. So it's easy for me to say and to read, but
It's also highly recognizable.
It
I
is highly
think.
recognizable.
And
but
unique.
the
which
potential
is a
for
good thing.
misspellings, though, is also...
Yeah, how do people
Yeah.
look up your name when they can't figure out how to spell it?
You should
it's
say what it is. Or
you should.
She did at the beginning of the story.
Kaseka and Vita.
And if anybody wants to know what language that's from and what all that stuff, check out Kathleen's interview at the end of Season 1 of Blog Talk Radio. So here's the second one. I'd like a name that reflects my inner self. And then they go on to say, this depends on your inner self happens to be.
Who your inner self
Yeah, who
happens
your
to be.
inner self. Yeah, I know. I moved my thumb. I'm reading from a smartphone. Well, a name like Merlin Firecat or Lady Sunshine, or Starshine, I'm sorry, Lady Starshine, may reflect something deep within you. It is likely to convey an impression of amateurism to an editor. If you want a pseudonym, keep it professional. Go for it.
Oh, I was just going to bring up something that was true of writing gay fiction, gay romance, gay erotica years ago. Like, before I started, like, looking to see if there were professionally done stories. Like, right at the beginning, people were definitely using pen names, but they were using pen names that were, like, one name with a lowercase letter at the beginning. More like internet pen names than, you know, this could be a real person's actual name, pen names. And I think that's changed as it's become more acceptable. But the whole name reflecting an inner self thing, I just wanted to add that caveat that it might also depend on the atmosphere in which you're publishing. Like, oh, and also for blog posts on astrology websites, something like that, Lady Starshine might be okay. No one will
Yeah.
expect it to be your real name, and it'll fit in with what you're doing. So think about where you're publishing
Well,
when you're
and
reflecting your inner self.
there's somebody I know who kept changing her real name as her pen name. And I'm thinking some of the names she picked, would you buy a book with that name? And I don't want to save a name on
Air.
air. So, Kathleen, feel free, because you've got that look on your face, feel free to ask me afterwards. But yeah, it's just one of those, like, when I buy a book with that name, it struck me as amateurish, to be honest. So that's going back to the other thing.
Can I just be clear real quick?
Yes.
I don't understand all of what you said. She was changing her real name or her pen name?
She actually changed her real name to it.
She changed her real name to her pen name.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Go on.
Okay. Once she finally settled on what it was going to be. Number 3, and I kind of sort of disagree with number 3 here, but I can
We've
see
disagreed with the other ones.
No,
too.
but that's fine. But this one I can understand, though. I don't want anyone to know that I'm an author. Most, and this is what they would continue right on, most editors have little tolerance for writers who want to hide behind a false name. If you're presenting a controversial opinion, you should be willing to defend it. If you're writing in a genre you fear others won't respect, keep in mind that this is their problem, not yours. And
I think we just...
we did. Yes. And finally, if you're writing material that you feel ashamed of, it's probably better to change the material than to change your name. As we were talking, Fedora was talking about a teacher who wrote romance. Honestly, I think the problem was her colleagues. But you know what? When the problem is everyone else, but you've still got to put up with it, it's still a pain in the you-know-where.
Yeah, we just discussed why we think that is wrong. It's not that it's a deep, dark secret. Your editor will certainly know what your real name is. You're not keeping it a secret from them. And if some of your colleagues want to investigate, they can find out. If anyone does a background check on you, they'll find out. But there's no reason why your colleague needs to know.
Or your parents of your students.
Yeah.
Not offering information that's going to make your life difficult.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's like you're not actively, you're keeping it private. It's like, I don't know the number of kids of everyone that I work with. I know some of it, but, some people, it's like, oh, I wonder if she's pregnant. She's never actually told me, so I'll just pretend not to notice until I hear that there's been official word. It's just, there's different areas of your life, and it's okay to keep them separate.
Going on that one is number 4, and I can see... Going back to what we talked about with a teacher, if a teacher wrote something that's more controversial in genre, we'll say erotic romance, just not picking on one, but just to use one.
No, but it is a pretty fair one to use
It
in those
is.
situations.
It is. Can you imagine an elementary school teacher who, knowing how some parents are, that are discovered that this teacher teaches my child and writes erotic romance?
Pilloried.
Oh, God.
Is the word.
Yeah, especially the temper of the present time.
Yes.
Well, not
so
even-
number 4...
Or just curses in your book.
Yes.
This writer writes books full of curse words.
Oh, sidebar to that. True story. A friend, well, not a friend of mine anymore, but was a friend for a while, was a librarian in a town south of St. Louis. I'm trying not to completely identify everything, but I will identify the author, John Lutz. Love his work. I've gotten to meet him several times. But he had certain curse words in his books. And it fits, in my opinion, it fits with writing. Fits with storytelling. Some patron of this library went through and crossed out every single curse word in the book, came back, gave it back to the library, and complained that his books have too much cursing in it. Guys, it happens, believe it or not.
I saw that done in one book, but fortunately it was in pencil. So I went through
And erased
and
it.
erased it on every page that it occurred.
Yeah,
Can
Thank
I
you.
just say, if the book is not yours, you don't have the right to do all
I
those
agree with
things.
you.
I will admit to correcting typos in library books occasionally.
good.
But those are really typos.
But no, I would agree with you, except for some people are of the opinion I pay your salary, thus you bought this book, thus it's mine. Yeah.
It bothers me when they highlight in library books, too.
yes,
Yeah, I've
it
never
does.
done that, but yeah.
Oh.
Anyway,
my goodness,
sorry, I
that's
knocked us off the rails. Number 4, that I was mentioning, ties to number 3. I don't want my relatives, friends, coworkers to know that I'm writing about them. Okay, I know what they write here, and I'm not going to disagree with them. There's a problem with that one.
Getting sued for libel.
That's right there. If you're writing about people you know, if it can be identified clearly in the court of law, at least in a civil court, and being very specific with that, because you're not going to go criminal court, but in civil court, the rules of the rules are different. In criminal court, you've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. In civil court, you've just got to prove that it is more likely than not that thus you are guilty. If you are writing about people and they can be identified and you write something that's not good or perceived as not good, you can be sued.
Yeah.
So know that. Now, there are certain exclusions, and at this point in time, I must hereby interject my standard disclaimer. I am a paralegal. I am not an attorney. I am not able to give legal advice. Mm-hmm. Nothing I give you is to be construed as legal advice. It is a personal opinion. If you need to have legal advice, please seek an actual attorney who has passed the bar.
Now that you read us our rights.
And now that I read you the keep out of jail card. My whole point of that disclaimer is true. If you are wanting to write about people you know, and assuming they're still alive, seek legal advice. At least get a consultation by an attorney before you do anything to make sure that you're covered. Go ahead. And that's assuming that no matter how hard you try, you still can't bury their name.
No, that's another thing. There's writing about someone, like if you're writing a memoir, but then there's writing a fictional character that certain aspects are inspired by this real person. And you've changed a lot of things, but, if this particular person read it, they might be able to spot the similarities. And in that case, using a nom de plume might make it less identifiable because it's like, oh, this person isn't immediately identified as working with the author.
Okay, you're really jumping into the legal side of it. I'm going to go ahead and let Kathleen talk.
No, I'm just saying that's another reason for a nom de plume, to put one more layer of separation between you and the...
You're still tap dancing on thin ice.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can't do it. Can I tell a story and then I'm going to give it to you?
Well, anybody can get sued over anything.
Oh, yes.
Just starting
there.
That doesn't mean they're going to win,
is a mystery,
or they have a good case.
There's a mystery author. Now she writes romance, but there's a mystery author. Many of us around this table know that her first 5, 7 books, whatever, she was killing off her ex-husband in these books, in every single one. Now, what turned out to be funny is her ex-husband became a fan of these books, not realizing that it's who it is. It's a question of whether or not the person can identify themselves and other people can identify them.
And how did he die?
I'm not going to go down that road.
5 different ways.
Yes, go ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you're taking inspiration from life, as all writers do, it's good to change enough of the details that it is not immediately identifiable. If it's a person, that person is who you were thoroughly inspired by.
Right.
And not just little details like, my professor's hair is brown and he wears glasses and always wears sweater vests. So this person is going to be a professor of the same subject at the same school, but his hair is black and he never wears sweater vests. And that's
he has contact
great.
lenses,
Yeah, exactly. That's not enough. You need to change some fundamental
If he's thin, you have to
details.
make him fat. If he's Caucasian, it might help to make him Chinese or Iranian or something. And
this really is a topic for another time, but
But I actually wanted to ask, because you mentioned, Melanie, that it's different with fiction writing versus with memoir writing. Peter, you've written nonfiction, and some of the characters, some of the people have been from your own life.
Yes.
Did you run into anything like that? And did you consider using a pen name at all?
No, because it loses a lot when you don't claim this as a true story. You really can't. And I was careful about living people, and I put a disclaimer at the front of the book. I said something to the effect of, well, to those of you who may be mentioned in the book, thank you for being part of my lives. I have represented events as clearly as I can remember them, but please know that you have been a wonderful memory and that sort of thing. I said it better than I can remember right now, but it just to say, and a lot of people, and then if I change something, particularly writing creative nonfiction where you're creating scenes where maybe you couldn't possibly remember who said what, it helps to say a disclaimer at the front of the book saying historical figures have been treated fictionally, and that includes my dead father, my deceased mother, things like that. They are now historical figures.
Mm-hmm.
So it does sound like we've brought up the point, though, that for some genres, like memoir, like nonfiction, it can be more important to use your real name than a pen name, because you're claiming authority in the topic, and you need to be able to back up that authority as yourself.
Speaking of which, does that mean that nonfiction writers particularly, should be very careful if they're considering using a pen name? So, for instance, I know some people of scientific articles that have always published under their maiden names. They got married, they kept publishing under their maiden names because they wanted their body of work to be the same, but it was their legal name. It was just the difference between being married and not married. They didn't purposely set out to write under a pen name.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a different situation, because with the rate of divorce we have in America, at the very least, they could be back to their maiden names at some point.
No,
it's more. It sounds like that's a branding thing.
Yeah, but I was.
Their work to be
Meredith
together.
writes underneath her
And they
maiden
don't.
name.
Yeah.
And it also sounds like they don't set out to use a pen name necessarily.
Right.
No, but I was just saying that it might be a mistake for most nonfiction, not just scientific articles, but also I don't know about cookbooks. Maybe cookbooks can be branded, but if you're writing a book on the history of cheese, for example, is it more important to use your real name?
Well, I
Yes.
am not married. I am not dating. I don't know if those are in my future, and they might be, and if they are, that's great. But I feel like my name that I grew up with is my name, so if I were to publish nonfiction, even if I got married, I would want my name, my original name, and not someone else's name appended to it.
But
and that's a personal thing.
But I was actually asking a different question.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of people actually changing their legal name or not changing it, would publishing nonfiction specifically under a pen name ever be appropriate? And I'm talking about creative nonfiction too.
Well, I think maybe one of the reasons why to choose a pen name, I'm going to eventually get to, hopefully, might answer that question.
Okay.
I think...
Go ahead.
Oh,
Or, sorry.
I was going to say branding.
Yeah.
Right
Yeah.
back to Lady Starshine.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not someone's real name, but if they have another life, if they have another life that is separate from all the astrology, but in...
You want to write a nonfiction astrology book?
Yes, and
Yeah.
if they're known in the astrology community, I'm using this as an example because of Starshine.
I know.
If they're known in the astrology community as Lady Starshine, then keeping that name, writing a nonfiction book, like bringing all of that stuff together, is probably a better idea than using their real name, which people in the community won't recognize.
Yeah.
So I think there are definitely pros and cons no matter what genre you're going into.
But they differ based on genre.
Based on, lots of things, but
Go ahead.
genres especially.
Maybe.
One of the things that you said about your name being, your original name that your parents gave you being your name, your real name. I think sometimes, at least, the name you choose for yourself is more your real name than any other name you get from anywhere else, including your own parents.
Like Lady Starshine.
Exactly.
Lady Gaga.
It is one of the reasons why I wanted a pen name. I wanted to be Fedora Amos because that just sounds good to me, and it's in the mold of my idol, and you all know who my idol is, Mark Twain. His name had the whole Mississippi River in it, and mine has, I think, a really nice hat.
Yes, it does. More than one hat, I think.
And
Well, I have a bunch of fedoras. I
Yeah,
do.
I bet.
I have about 40.
You may have many, but there is only one of you.
So
Yes.
true.
Number 5. And actually, number 5 addresses an issue, Peter, you were talking about off mic. So we'll get to that. No one will respect me because I'm fill in the blank. And he goes, the days of having to write under a male pseudonym simply because you're a woman are long past. I question some aspects of that.
Right.
Today, there's no need to call yourself blah, 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 blah. Go for it.
Oh, I was going to say, I have friends that don't read male writers because they hate how much male writers have gotten women wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a strike against some, depending on the reader. And I think, based on what I have read of, erotic romance, for the most part of what I have read, and I need to say what I have read, what men focus on and what women focus on when they're writing these stories is different. I prefer female authors of erotic romance because I tend to focus on those things more too.
So if a male author had the female-focused style, maybe in your mind they should choose a female pen name so you know to choose them.
I don't want people to have to lie about who they are. I think it's also true with urban fantasy writers with strong female character protagonists and male authors writing them that's clear. People are choosing unisex names, I think, a lot more now. So readers don't judge them prematurely for those same reasons. And I'm not saying that men and women can't write men and women equally well. I'm saying that in the experience I've had with what I have read, I have noticed some trends in both directions for certain things.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to jump right on that. For a while, I was working on a PI series, which I put aside. I couldn't do it. But it was a strong female character written from the first person point of view. One of the things, this was an idea that was given to me by somebody who is very respected in the industry. One of the things I was talking with them was the whole idea of pen names. Because, what you were pointing out, I wasn't writing erotica, but this still fell into place, is it has been studied that women did not want to read a woman's story written by a man, generally speaking. So the whole idea, first person, or even third.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But there's exceptions to that rule. But generally speaking, that was the case with the studies, and we had a whole long discussion. Do I change my name? Do I initial my name? What do we do? And so that is still out there. And then also, too, there are some cases in which areas of fiction you won't get published necessarily underneath the different gender name than what's normally common out there.
Right.
Sadly, it's a prejudice that still continues to a much lesser degree, thank God, but still.
Well, I think those prejudices
Sorry.
are changing in a number of ways, and I think at least some of it has something to do with Sisters in Crime, because now there are men who are using initials, for example,
Yes.
C.W. Kaskaskian, who is a man, but disguising himself a little bit as women used to do with J.D. Robb or whoever, so that they would sound more like men, because initials are non-gender. And I think that because men mystery writers are seeking the women mystery reader audience, which is much bigger than the male mystery audience, males, and I know this is an awful generalization, but tend to like thrillers better than traditional mysteries. So men who write traditional mysteries are often going that route, and it has its advantages, you got to admit it.
Well, I went down I was just curious when I was trying to figure out at the very beginning of my fiction career what genres I should concentrate on, and I went down a list of all the members of Romance Writers of America, and there are a couple hundred names on this particular list, and I went down and down and down. They were almost all women's names, a few that used the initials, so you thought, well, he could be men, and maybe 3 or 4 that used men's names. So I think there's a big bias, perhaps among editors and publishers, of wanting to have a woman's name on a romance.
And that's very recent. Not on romance particularly, but on mystery for sure.
Harry Potter books. Who's the author of Harry Potter? J.K.
Rowling.
Rowling. The reason why it's published under J.K., I don't know if this is still true, but at the time, boys in her age group that the books were targeted at would not read female authors. Girls would read female, male equally, but boys wouldn't. So it was, at least to her readers and her target audience, it was a secret she was a female until about the third or fourth book.
Mm-hmm.
I went and hunted down the site that you're on, Mr. David, because I wanted to read along with you. And
Did you ever say what site you're on?
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
What site?
Writing.word.com.
Okay.
writingworld.com.
Writing-word.world.com.
This
Sorry.
particular page is Should You Use a Synonym by Moira Allen.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, pseudonym. I read synonym, and that's not the word at all. Anyway, so after the list of 5 that we've gone through,
That's what's
reasons
going
not
next.
to,
Uh-huh.
there is also a list of good reasons to use a pseudonym, and we've been discussing a bunch of them.
We have been.
And some of them we've had pros and cons of the same point, really.
We're actually discussing the third one right now. You write in a genre that has expectations about its authors.
Right.
And the example they give is when was the last time you saw a romance novel by Jake Hammersmith? Or a hardcore thriller by Felicity Valentine.
But isn't that just like saying the negative reason of hiding your gender?
In certain genres, writers often prefer to conform to reader expectations, or may be required to do so by their publishers.
Exactly.
And that's
So-
exactly opposite of what point 5 just said.
right.
And don't forget that George Eliot, the famous Victorian author, was a woman, Mary Ann Cross Evans.
And so was
May Evans.
George Sand, very famous writer too, whose real name was Aurora Dudevant.
I think the reason that this, in this wording especially, is on the good reasons list is because readers do have expectations, and you can, being a writer is hard enough. It's hard to make a living at this. And as much as you can make it easy for yourself to do well, you should.
Agreed. Number 1 of that list that you're getting to. That was my next part. Is now let's talk about the reasons why, or some reasons why you might want to use a pseudonym. Number 1 actually contradicts an earlier one, and we talked about that contradiction already. Your writing could interfere with aspects of your career, with other aspects of your career. Once again, the teacher who would write romance, or the invented teacher who would write erotic romance, that clearly would interfere with her teaching aspects. This one, actually, I can name an author who wrote in the same genre with pen names, but you write in more than one genre or field having a pen name. One I'm going to mention, is one of my favorite authors, and Fedora knows who I'm talking about. Earl Stanley Gardner, who also wrote as A.A. Fair, and I think he also had multiple pen names that he published under. Because, actually, in his case, it wasn't so much name recognition being a good thing, it was name recognition being a bad thing. And what it was is that when people read Earl Stanley Gardner, they expected something like a Perry Mason. But he also became so published out there that, based on what I remember reading from his notebooks, is that basically the publishers were saying, we can't afford to buy your book or whatever because you're this well established, so we've got to pay you at this level. It's like, no, I just want to get the book out, pay me at this lower level. So in the long run, they ended up coming up with pen names. Sorry.
Oh, I was going to add subgenres to that particular thing because Charles DeLint, both the names that I mentioned of his are writing, urban fantasy.
Yeah.
The difference is that one is a darker tone. The difference is tone and content. So,
Yeah. I think another reason would be even same exact subgenre, but different universe. So not too many authors do this, but for example, here's an author that at least Kathleen would recognize, like Laurel K. Hamilton doesn't use a pen name, but her Anita Blake books could be under one name, or in her Meredith Gentry books could be under a different name, for example.
They could conceivably, yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, she's doing well enough as Laurel K. Hamilton. She doesn't got to do anything.
No, but I am just saying that, so for instance, some books, this is why series have names, but if your series, if you didn't have an actual series, but all your books were set in the same general universe, like Discworld for Terry Pratchett.
Oh, no, I can see your
You know.
point. I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
I guess my like quibble was, if you're one of the 1.0001% of writers, but most of us aren't.
Right.
Yeah. No, but I think, Nora Roberts does that, because all of her books, Nora Roberts writes a whole lot of books under her whole name. I don't know how she's that prolific, but all of her books under the name J.D. Robb are the same series, in the same universe.
I do want to get into the point that's point 4.
I'm waiting for people to stop talking
Yeah,
about that one so I can jump
we're
that
ready
one.
for you, sir.
Okay, but before we do that, just real fast, what it talks about is you write more than one genre or field. Peter would be a good example of that, though he doesn't do it. He writes mysteries and he writes memoir, biography, memoir, basically. Okay, number 4. We're skipping number 3 because we've already talked about it, which was you write in a genre that has expectations about its authors. Number 4, you have a history of failure.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It is.
Yes, I know people who have changed their pen names. I mean, starting out with a real name and then changing to a pen name in order to restart a career. And, of course, they did it in a different genre as well. But, well, I guess I don't want to say the name.
All right. I want to explain that one a little bit more. Also in Writing World is Pseudonyms, 10 Questions to Ask Before Choosing a Pen Name by Adrienne DeWolf. And I think she explains it pretty well. When the author wants to start fresh is her heading for it. She says, if an author's rate of return is 50% or higher after their third published novel, publishers will shy away from buying that author's future books. To overcome this sales stigma, an author might bury his name or pen name and give birth to a new pseudonym, hoping for a second chance with publishers and readers. So basically, if they're returning too many of your books to the publisher's not gonna think you're not doing well, and they're not gonna want to publish more from you. So in those cases, a pen name becomes almost necessary for a writer to be successful because
whatever name you have then is a liability.
Right, exactly. Go for it, and then I'm going to jump to
The
next one.
opposite is also true, like with Dave already mentioned with Earl Stanley Gardner. J.K. Rowling tried it and was outed, either on purpose or by accident, but I believe she didn't want to be outed because I suspect she actually could write adult books that people would enjoy to read as long as they didn't know it was her.
Right.
You know? So.
Okay, I'm going to love this next one. Number 5, you have the same name as an existing author. Like, if you are Stephen King, well, but you're not the Stephen King.
it's a good thing no one at this table has ever had a name that's the same as anyone else's name that's, you know...
We both have stories
I
here.
expect you to.
Yeah.
Both of you.
Now, in my case, I don't have the same real name as an author. Some author, and I know he's not listening, though I would wish he was. He's a comedian, and he took my first and last name, which is why I go with my middle name in there, as his pen name. Really? David Lucas had to be your pen name? It's not common enough? Really? And then Peter, you had more fun. I had to get that out. Go on.
There are at least 5 Peter Greens out there. The most famous is Peter Green, the founder and lead bass guitarist of Fleetwood Mac. And, you know, I would love to be confused with him, but it would just be a mess.
They'd expect you to play a guitar when you go to speak it.
Yeah. There's Peter H.R. Green that Amazon confused me with for about 10 years until I discovered Amazon Central and found out there was a way to straighten it out. And he is a famous medical doctor who is specialized in the diagnosis and cure of celiac disease. So he's very important these days. You know, another reason I'd love to be confused with him, but not when I'm writing fiction and.
But maybe they're buying your biography and thinking that it's his father.
Maybe.
Which leads us back to putting your pen name near an author who does well on
Yeah.
the shelves.
Well, I think you're better off to have uniqueness, and that's one of the reasons why I chose the name that I have. My real name, man, there are hundreds of them. But Fedora Amos, there's only one. You look at those search engines and you put down
Absolutely.
Fedora Amos and it comes up me first.
Yeah, my name, which my parents gave me, is also unique in the author world. I believe there are a few others in the world, but let's just say it's less than 10, if not less than 5. And I'm pretty sure all the others got the last name through marriage.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one. You're writing a collaborative work. Often, collaborative authors will invent a pseudonym to convey the impression that a book was written by a single author.
Like
Ellery
Charles
Queen?
Todd.
Okay, or
Charles
Ellery
Todd.
Queen.
Yeah.
Wait,
Danae
so
and whatever. Lee? Danae.
Uh-huh.
what did Charles Todd write in both selves? And
Charles Todd writes mysteries, but it's actually a mother and son team.
oh my
Caroline and I've forgotten his name.
Yeah.
David Eddings, in reprints, has given his wife co-authorship of a lot of his books.
Oh, I know some authors who have taken the husband's last name and the wife's last name and combined them, and that became the author's name, which to me is just tacky. I don't get it.
There's also a book that was kind of a social experiment done by the Shea Apocalypse people online. They titled the series "Booze Your Own Adventure,"
Oh yeah, I remember you talking about that.
their thing, they wanted to write a YA, romance.
They wanted to crowdsource a romance.
Yes. And they did videos throughout the whole thing, but they chose, it's multiple authors, like at least 6, because they had crowdsourcing people sending in chapters. But they called themselves Sarah Ellenson, and they
And
chose.
Sarah Ellison is a parody. They put together an author page for her.
She's not real. She's as much.
She's more a character than the characters in the book.
Yes. And that's another reason for a pen name, because if they had put all of their names there, people might have suspected this book was not part, spoof.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it
Well-
was never much of a secret, but yeah.
Yeah, but like there are some people who would come across it and wonder, but they wouldn't know for sure unless they looked it up. But yeah, it just also made it easier for all of them, I think, to be under that name. So
Next one. And I can think of various examples of this one, though. The following that we're going to talk about, I didn't know was one. You're using a publisher's house name. Some pseudonyms, such as V.C. Andrews, I didn't know this, are owned by the publisher.
Carolyn Keene.
Carolyn Keene, which, thank you, you just
Has
named
been-
one of them,
thank you.
is the trade name for the author of...
Nancy Drew books.
Exactly. And also, what's the guy who wrote, or the pen name, if you will, for Hardy Boys?
F.W. Dixon.
Thank you.
And didn't you say that the same person, man or woman, wrote both?
Both, for a while. Mhm.
Yeah.
Can I just say
Tom Swift was also one. Go ahead. That was the name of the series.
This
Appleton. Sorry, go on.
I had no idea like how it was all possible. I didn't realize it was the publisher owning the pen name.
Yeah.
But when I was little, I always wondered how Carolyn Keene wrote so,
So
many
many
books. I was like, wow. Yeah, and then
And I also
realized it
wondered
was
why her
multiple
writing
authors.
style changed so drastically sometimes.
I figured out there were multiple authors at some point along the way, but that the publisher has the name and that's a trademark. That's new information to me. It's really cool.
Okay,
No, I've heard that as an argument to keep your own name, because then almost all the time you retain ownership. They can't sneak out and accidentally let them buy the rights to your nom de plume.
Yeah. But if you get involved in a book like that, there's a contract which makes that very clear. You're going to write under this name.
Yeah, but if you're
and-
writing a Nancy Drew book, that's different. If you're writing your own series that you created,
yeah.
that's different.
Yeah.
Okay, number 8. You hate your name.
It's a good thing
And-
nobody at this table said anything like that ever in the history of time.
And what's funny is actually my mom, who is not a writer, she's not even a reader, but she hated her first name, so she was always going by her middle name. And so I've lived with somebody who, even though technically not a pen name, but that case where she hated her name, so she did change her name.
Actually, that can be quite useful going by the middle name because you can always tell who's sending it. Because, like, my uncle also goes by his middle name. If something, his real first name is John, so if something comes addressed to John so-and-so, you know it's one of two categories. Either very official mail where he had to use his legal name, or complete junk mail. It is nothing personal to him. So as long as it's not really official, he can throw it away.
I do want to add that it mentions, you don't necessarily have to hate your name, but it says this could also apply if your name is difficult to pronounce or spell. So, yeah.
Or
And
extremely long-winded, as they've got one on here.
Yeah, my last name isn't that hard. It's not hard to pronounce once you hear it, but people can't seem to figure out how to hear it, and if you hear it, you wouldn't spell it the right way, so, yeah.
actually, how my last name is pronounced is how we could tell if it was someone who actually knew us or not calling the house. If they said the last name wrong, they were probably a telemarketer, and we knew we could just be like, we're not buying anything. Like,
Yes. Okay, number 9. And I think this is a very important one. You write for competing publications.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that would be a good one. I mean, I do know of some authors who have written in multiple genres and published through multiple houses underneath their name, and because they're in different genres. But yeah, if you're publishing for Random Penguin, I mean Penguin Random House, and you're publishing under Schuster, well, first off, I'm going to bow before you for nailing 2 big houses, but that might cause a problem, especially in the contracts, if you're publishing under different names, and each publisher has different expectations for you.
the example that this author gives is someone working, like writing a column for a magazine and being approached by a magazine in the same, well, in a similar field to work for them as well. And, you know, using pen names and keeping your topics separate. And everybody would know, you know, all the editors involved, everybody, it would be open about that. But keeping those names separate so the magazines aren't competing directly because of you in some fashion.
Okay. So, are there any other good reasons anyone can think of for writing underneath a pen name?
Well, I think the very best one is branding, because you're a small business if you're a writer. You are your own small business. And like any business, you need a logo. You need a brand that will speak to people and that you can sell to people, whether they're agents or people buying your books or publishers or whoever they might be. You have to be a unique person. You have to package yourself like a product. And that's why branding, I think, is the main reason to have a pseudonym.
I would go with that. And I'm mentally knocking my head against the wall because I just realized I may have to force myself to go take a pen name. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but I'm thinking about it because of what you just said. For example, I wrote for a while, I need to pick it back up, life kind of interfered, but a serial called Skittles. Well, about a cat, written from a cat's point of view, who's eventually going to go to Mars. I don't write for kids, but I've got kid fans. And I can
Maybe
guarantee
you do write for kids.
Maybe
You just don't know it
they
yet.
know it. And the series I'm currently working on, this military sci-fi, which is different, which is not about war. That's why I call it different. It's not necessarily for kids. It's more of an adult.
So he's writing G-rated blog, and this book would be more PG-13.
Yeah, PG-13 definitely. R for some of the scariness, but yes, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to read the 10 questions to ask before choosing a pen name by
Go for
Adrienne
it.
DeWolf.
Go for it.
From the same site. She says, here are 10 questions to consider as you decide whether or not to write under a pseudonym. 1. How comfortable are you with having your real name splashed all over the internet, especially if your writing is being savage in a blog post or book review?
True.
2. Are you likely to attract more readers in your fiction genre if you're writing novels as a male or female?
Talked about that. Yes.
3. Would your name be easier to remember, pronounce, or spell if it were more generic? Or, as Fedora
Less
said,
generic.
less generic.
Yes.
Carolyn Keene. Good detective.
4. Is your real name so common that it could be easily confused with the name of someone else?
Yes.
Yes.
For instance, a highly publicized white-collar criminal, or another author in your fiction
Oh,
genre.
that's true.
5. Would you prefer to err on the side of caution, protecting your loved ones from your followers or from any future career fallout that you may suffer? 6. How comfortable are you with the idea that fans and detractors may be able to find you in the phone book and show up at your house or your place of business?
More
Or the
easily.
internet? Yeah. 7. Is your preferred pseudonym easy to spell and remember? 8. Does your real name invoke a positive association with the fiction genre that you're writing? For instance, if your birth name is Cherry Clapp, you may face hurdles in the romance genre. 9. 9. Are you planning to write multiple fiction genres? And 10.
What's
I'm sorry, I'm so stuck on
David,
it. Go
what's
ahead.
the rating on this show?
Unfortunately, we're PG. We're good.
10.
That was good. Go on.
Where is your preferred pseudonym likely to be shelved? At the bottom of a bookstore's stacks, near the name of a best-selling author in your fiction genre? And there is the list.
I like it.
Yeah, it's a good list. We've talked about most of those things.
I think that's a great list. There's another thing that I would like to add that, I thought a long time about Fedora Amos, and I was able to craft it. That is, you can make it what you want. Carolyn Keene sounds great together, and keen is sharp. It's what a detective needs.
Should be,
And we've got
absolutely.
the K sound for a little alliteration. You can craft a name that really works, and that publisher, I think, did. And
you
I
can
like to
make-
think that I crafted a name that I like a lot, that has a good sound to it, for example.
And you can eliminate unfortunate acronyms of your name, which might appear. Because, 3 letters, your initials, it's amazing how many things those could spell just, coincidentally. If you. Or especially, 4 in some cases.
Are you looking at me because you know what 3
No.
of my initials are?
No, actually.
I'm not a clan member. I have a 4th initial.
I didn't know what your middle name was.
Whenever people find out, they're like, oh! And I'm like, oh, no, calm down.
You know what, though? You could go by the capsule version of that. There was a killer called Triple K. Or 3K. Yeah.
3K, yeah.
Oh,
But
I'm
then
clear.
change one of those K's to a C, then you KCK or...
Casey Kasem? You gotta be careful what your initials are, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the things that your name will bring up in people's minds.
Yes.
So,
Like,
what brought up the whole topic of pseudonyms when we began was the conversation we had about Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Goodreads before. It should have aired about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. The question is if I change my name to a pseudonym, will that prevent the removal of reviews by friends and family and all that good stuff that are at least listed, identified as friends on social media? Sadly, when off mic, Peter and I were Googling this question, and Amazon's website has rules about basically you have to identify yourself as your pseudonym on Amazon, on your books, and they find out who you are. Anyway, so
Now-
go on.
on the other hand, there's nothing to be said that you couldn't do the other way around, publish under your real name and use a pseudonym for all your friends on Facebook, which might be a good way to do it anyway, so only your friends can find you on Facebook and not people. We have friends that do that for non-author reasons.
I think part of the problem with the Amazon situation and with having to use pen names everywhere is that, for that reason, is that
Sorry.
any review is subjective. It's always going to be subjective.
Yeah.
That's how humans are when we write opinions on things. But the other thing is that because of how connected our world is, which is what makes it easy for Amazon to look these things up, people are becoming friends or followers of other people on online social media forums that suggests the way Amazon seems to be using them. That these people have a closer relationship than they do.
Yeah, for instance, are they removing the reviews of the president of your fan club?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
And like, I think it's getting easier to meet authors and people whose work you enjoy. And if you already enjoy their work, you're going to be biased toward them anyway. So it's making the reader, it's making it difficult for readers who already like your stuff to then tell people that they like your stuff because maybe they met you because they were excited that you were going to be somewhere.
Well, I'm going just a quick dovetail. I think Peter wanted to talk about a quick dovetail into what you just said. Modern day book sales is all about connecting to the reader. I don't care how big of a name or how small of a name you've got out there. That's the modern day. You're no longer just able to sit at a bar and type away your book, drinking whatever
Absinthe mojitos.
and not get in public.
I just wonder how many times that Nora Roberts gets challenged and she appears and has her readers say, "You look exactly like J.D. Robb."
Pretty much none, because every single J.D. Robb book has Nora Roberts' name on it.
But I mean, in a different situation where people
Yeah.
didn't know that, it's a problem, I think.
Yeah. I think it's important to recognize that even if you do get a pen name, because of the branding necessary and the, building a platform, building a readership, because of the work that goes into that and the publicity efforts you have to make as a writer to go into that, it's going to be hard to keep pen names entirely secret. J.K. Rowling couldn't do it. Yeah. And I'm sure in part because she was J.K. Rowling. But I think pen names are going to be more open secrets if they're trying to be kept secret than they used to be. Mm-hmm. Because we are too connected now to keep that kind of information quiet in the same way. And if you're going to build a brand around your name, your pen name, you're still going to have to be there to do it,
Yeah.
I can just imagine, hiring someone to play your pen name. So, maybe get your cousin, your sister, someone that's always going to be there to do it,
People have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that has, people caught flack for doing that,
yeah.
Trying to keep their own lives, separate. So know that no matter what reason you have for getting a pen name, and whether it's right for you and your reasons or not, you are going to have to own up to that pen name to someone. So, be proud of what you do and what you write. Don't make your life more difficult because of it, but be aware that it's not going to be a secret.
And with that is the perfect ending. So we are going to end this week's episode, and everyone out there, have a good week writing. Thank you. The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her. Right Pack Radio would like to thank STL Books for allowing us to record in their office. STL Books is an online bookstore specializing in new and used high-quality literature, children's books, and books written by or about St. Louis. Please visit them online at www.stlbooks.com or find their store on the Amazon.com website.